a new movie starring Emma Watson, Tom Hanks, Patton Oswalt, and John Boyega. And this movie is basically about sometime in the near future where there's this organization called The Circle. They're basically this organization that tries to have cameras basically everywhere in the world, and they try to invade a lot of people's privacy so that they can see when terrorist attacks are about to happen or when criminals are doing bad things so they can stop the criminals. And at first that sounds like a good idea, but as Emma Watson joins this organization, we soon find out that this movie invades way too much into people's privacy, and it's kind of becoming a problem. And as far as I know, this movie had virtually no screenings for critics at all. So this movie's bound to be great. So guys, I knew nothing about The Circle going in. I saw the trailer and I still couldn't really tell what the movie was about. I was like, okay, this looks like it could be a cool concept from the things that I've been hearing about the plot, and the cast is really good. Tom Hanks and Emma Watson in a movie together sounds like a match made in heaven. This movie sounds like it could be awesome. You also got John Boyega and Patton Oswalt, two very talented people, and I was intrigued by this movie, but I didn't know much about it. It just seemed like it would be one of those disposable good movies that it's not really great, but it's kind of just it's good, but you like forget about the next day. I didn't think this movie could be bad in the slightest because of the cast involved, but then when I saw the movie, well, I was proven wrong. The Circle is a really, really bad movie, unfortunately. This movie is actually very, very bad, and the mistakes they make in this movie are so amateur. I can't really give this movie credit because it does so many things wrong and it's involved with such a good cast that the fact that they dropped the ball this much with this movie is kind of embarrassing. But before I get to the many cons that this movie has to offer, I will talk about the pros first. The acting in this movie is very good. It's very good, obviously. Emma Watson does a really good job in her role. Tom Hanks, when he's on screen, is not in the movie that much, but when he's on screen, he brings on so much charisma. He had one really funny moment towards the end of this movie that made me laugh out loud in the theater, and it wasn't like a moment that was like unintentionally funny, like a lot of really bad M. Night Shyamalan movies, but it was actually a moment that was intentionally funny, and it really made me laugh hard, and I was like, that's amazing. Every time Tom Hanks is on the screen, you're like, oh my gosh, finally, there's some charisma in this movie. We can have something to be entertained by, because anytime Tom Hanks is in a movie, even if it's a bad movie, he's usually very entertaining and charismatic, and in this movie, it's no different. He's not in the movie a lot, but he was very charismatic in this movie. John Boyega, even though he's in the movie even less than Tom Hanks, actually does do a good job in his role, and Patton Oswalt, who's not in the movie a lot, also does a good job. The reason I'm mentioning these other huge stars is because they are huge stars that a lot of people heard about in this movie, but really this is Emma Watson's film. This is Emma Watson's film, and she carries the entire thing. All the other stars in this movie aren't huge characters. It's all about Emma Watson and her experience with The Circle. Also, the concept of this movie is pretty cool. Having an organization and advanced technology that's sort of invasive of everyone's privacy, but they really like it. They really like this idea, and it starts to become a really invasive thing in our society. It was actually a really cool idea, and it was actually a very good concept that could have made a good movie. But let's get into my cons. I mentioned that this movie is entirely centered around Emma Watson. She is the center of this movie. She's a very good actress. I like her a lot, and Hermione, Beauty and the Beast is one of the biggest surprises of this year so far. It's one of my favorite movies of the year, if you saw my review of that, and she was fantastic in that movie. Emma Watson is a very good actress. She's shown to me that she can be very talented in a lot of stuff. And in this movie, she does do a good job, but her character is so bad. Not only is her character really bland and boring in this movie, but she makes so many decisions that no human would ever make. At first, when she goes into the circle, she's like so uneasy about all this stuff that's happening. She's like, wow, this is a little bit invasive of my privacy. I don't really like this. And then she just decides that she loves the circle all of a sudden out of nowhere, and it's totally out of left field, and she's like, yeah, you guys can have a camera on me so that you can see everything that I'm doing at every second of the day. It's like, where did this come from? Her character was such an idiot the whole movie. And no spoilers, of course, but there's this decision that she makes at the end of the movie that was so atrocious and terrible, and it made me hate her character so much. She's the lead of this movie. So why is her character so unlikable in this film? It's like they wanted to focus around a movie that was centered around a terrible character. John Boyega in this movie, I mentioned that he's good. I love him in Star Wars. He's a really good actor, but in this movie, his character, his whole subplot involving his character, Completely pointless. Could have cut it out of the movie entirely. Very pointless, and his character was just completely wasted. Patton Oswalt, like I said, he's good in this movie, but from a great comedic guy, you'd think they could get some charisma in. He's very charismatic. He's really good at his stand-up comedy routines, but in this movie, really all he does is just stand there and go like, oh, good job, Emma Watson. You did a good thing for the circle. Good job. That's literally Patton Oswalt in this movie the entire time. He just stands around in the shadows and it's like, oh yes, it's very good. Why would you cast Patton Oswalt, the comedian, to do a role like that? Give Patton Oswalt a role that's really charismatic and Patton Oswalt-y. And also another actor that I thought was really good in this movie was Bill Paxton in his final role. Rest in peace, Bill Paxton. You were gone way too soon. You're a very good actor. And I really liked him in this movie. He played a guy that had like this, I forget what it was called, but it was sort of this disorder where he can't control his muscles. He's always like shaking when he's trying to eat something and all that. He has a lot of issues. And I actually felt a lot of sympathy for him, even though he isn't in the movie like at all. He's barely in it. But Bill Paxton I thought did a very good job in this movie, and I was interested in where they were going to take his character. But he just felt wasted. Him and his wife, Emma Watson's parents, their characters just felt wasted. They felt like they went nowhere. They were just kind of there for a few seconds and then it's just, okay, goodbye. Why? Why did you have another talent like Bill Paxton in such a tiny little role? Why didn't you continue that storyline? That could have brought something interesting to this movie. Because the whole time during this entire movie, it's incredibly boring. There's not really a conflict that happens until like the last 30 minutes of the movie. Basically, the entirety of this movie is just Emma Watson going around in the circle and she's like, I gotta listen to these meetings. Yay! Whee! I'm Emma Watson! Woohoo! The whole movie is basically just her walking around in the circle, listening to meetings with exposition, and it doesn't really have any conflict or tension until like the last act of the movie. The last 30 minutes, something of meat happens, and it's just like the entire rest of the movie is just boring meetings with Emma Watson listening to things and her just going like, oh, that's very interesting. I like the circle, even though it's incredibly invasive of property and stuff. That's another problem with the movie, is that nobody would put stock in a plan like this. If this was real, nobody would put stock in this. It's too invasive of privacy. People would think it's sick, people would think it's weird, and there are a few people that think it's weird, like Emma Watson's parents are some of the only characters that think this is somewhat weird, but they're barely in the movie, and nobody really cares that this is invasive of some people's property, so it was just like, I don't understand how this could even happen. If this was in the real world, people would shut it down immediately. Let me put it this way. Imagine if the Fine Bros, when they did their little shenanigans a few years ago where they were talking about how they wanted to do that React thing, the React World thing, imagine if everyone was just like, yes, I love you Fine Bros for flagging all my React videos. I love you. I'm gonna give you all my money and this Fine Bros thing should be great. The circle is like the whole Fine Bros incident, except much bigger, and nobody did not support the circle. Fine Bros lost so many subscribers after what they did, and if this was real, nobody would put stock in the circle. Like I said, the concept is interesting, but it just doesn't really work. The execution doesn't work because you can't buy that anyone would put stock in an idea this ridiculous. And this movie also has one of the worst endings to a movie that I've seen in a long time. It was really atrocious what they did with the ending. It didn't make any sense. It was just like, the movie doesn't really even have a resolution. It's like Emma Watson, I'm not going to spoil it, but she makes this certain decision, and nobody learns their lesson from invading in everyone's privacy in the circle. Nothing happens of any meat in this movie. And then in the last 30 minutes, they make a decision that was very bad, and it feels like nothing was accomplished in this movie. It's just like Emma Watson goes into work and she just helps the circle out. That's the entire movie. That's the entire thing. There's obviously more story beats in this movie, but if you want to make a quick summary of this movie, Emma Watson helps the circle and nobody learns their lesson. That's it. No one really opposes the circle and its invasion of privacy. Nobody really tries to stand up against this horrible thing, and everyone just loves it. It is some amazing thing. But whoever wrote this movie probably thought the circle was a wonderful thing, even though there's several moments in this movie where they portray the circle as being kind of a bad thing. So I don't know. I don't know about this movie. I honestly don't understand the intention of this movie. It's incredibly boring. The characters aren't very good. Emma Watson, the lead of this movie, is a stupid idiot in this movie who makes the dumbest decisions. The movie doesn't have a resolution. Nothing happens of meat until like the last 30 minutes of the movie. This movie was a major disappointment, especially because of the talent involved. You got Emma Watson, Tom freaking Hanks, Patton Oswalt, John Boyega from Star Wars The Force Awakens fame. Guys, The Circle is a really bad movie, and I'm gonna give it a D. Alright guys, if you saw The Circle for whatever reason, just because Tom Hanks and Emma Watson are in it, be sure to comment your thoughts on how disappointed you were, or if you liked it for whatever reason, and be sure to like this video, be sure to subscribe, be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I will have a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 review this week. Can't wait to see that movie. I love the first one, just wanted to mention that because it's awesome, and I'm almost at 200 subscribers, so get me there, and I'm going to do a special video for that. Yay, bye-bye now.